If you've still got your wildcard chip available to you in FPL ahead of FPL Gameweek 30 and beyond that, we're going to be discussing all things about the wildcard and chip strategy going forward as well, but especially the wildcard as well, because in Gameweek 30, a lot of people are thinking about playing that wildcard. Also as well, a lot of people are thinking about it in Gameweek 31. We're going to be discussing when I think the best time is to play this wildcard chip, and we're going to be looking at some teams to target for the wild card as well as that. And as well as that, we're going to be looking at double game week 33 and blank game week 34. There's so much to get through in this video. And we're also going to be looking at a wild card team as well. So do drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel. It takes 1 second to subscribe. And if you want daily FPL content and you're prepared for all these doubles and blanks, then do hit subscribe on this channel. We've got to start off by talking about the FA Cup fixtures. The FA Cup fixtures do actually take place before the game week 30 deadline. So we will actually be able to figure out what teams will be doubling and what teams will be blanking before the game week actually takes place in game week 30. We won't actually know when these games will be taking place 100% because by game week 31 we're expecting all them fixtures then to get rearranged from the winners of the FA Cup quarter-final games. So the winners of the FA Cup quarter-finalists in these ties will then go on to double in. We expect game week 33 and then blank in 34. So we've got Fulham versus Crystal Palace, Brighton versus Nottingham Forest, Preston versus Aston Villa, and then as well as that Bournemouth versus Manchester City. So as you can see, we have got a planner here for the fixtures going forward on the teams that are expected to win in game week 30. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed. We don't know what's going to happen in that FA Cup game. But Aston Villa are expected to double because they do play Preston. It's quite a good chance of Aston Villa doubling in game week 33. And then Brighton are expected to double as well as that. Fulham are also expected to double. They're the favourites against Crystal Palace, but that's a very, very close game, you'd say, between those two teams. Manchester City are very, very likely to double as well as they face Aston Villa. So only one of Manchester City and Aston Villa need to win their FA Cup game to double in game week 33. So we're expecting a double for Aston Villa and Man City. That's probably the most nailed on double that we have got out of all the doubles. And as well as that, potentially Southampton could double and West Ham could double as well. So there's quite a lot of teams there that could double. But then them teams that will double, as you can see on the screen, they will actually then blank after that game week. So that is, of course, we would like to ideally, if you still have your free hit, the free hit will be the best to use in game week 34 because we want to be targeting them double game week 33 fixtures, whoever it is, whoever wins them FA Cup games, and then they will be, of course, then be blanking in 34. And if you do have your free hit chip available to you, then of course then you can just free hit and not even think about that game week at all. If you've already used your free hit, you'll kind of just have to, with the double game week 33, you'll just kind of have to maybe take a potential hit. And as well as that, you're just going to have to be prepared and have single game week players in game week 33 who then play in 34 just so you've not absolutely ruined your game week 34 game week just to then get the best game week 33 game week. Probably the best way is just to split your kind of options and go for some double game week players and go for some players that are going to also play in the blank as well. That is if you do not have your free hit chip available to you. But as I say, if you're playing the wild card, these thoughts definitely need to go into your head because we need to know who's going to be doubling in 33. So obviously we want to be choosing in our game week 30/game week 31 wild card these players that are going to double, and then of course we have our free hit. We're gonna free hit them out of the team for that blank game week 34. Then we also need to have in our thinking the fact that Newcastle and Crystal Palace do both double in game week 32. Newcastle play against Manchester United and then Crystal Palace, and then Crystal Palace do play against Man City and then Newcastle. Not a great double gaming for Crystal Palace, but as I said before, they could also potentially double in game week 33. So with Crystal Palace assets, you could get potential back-to-back double game weeks, and we'll know that before the game week 30 deadline. And of course, this has been because Newcastle did get to the EFL Cup final, and then that game did get put in to game week 32. So in our wildcard teams, we are going to be kind of filling it with quite a few Newcastle players, at least probably 2 Newcastle players, maybe even 3. And to be honest, if Crystal Palace are going to win that FA Cup game and double in 33, it'll be just a simple triple up on Crystal Palace. We're going to be discussing some of the best players to bring into your wildcard team, some absolute lock-ins in my personal wildcard team if I was to do a wildcard this week. And as I say, it's kind of down to you with your decision of when to play your wildcard. With game week 30, as I say, you're going to know what teams are going to double, but you don't know when they're 100% going to double. And, you know, with the blank game week, because you don't know 100% what is going to happen. This is just what we expect, which we're pretty certain on at the moment. But as I say, nothing is guaranteed in FPL. So a lot of people are thinking of waiting for game week 31 with their wildcard just due to the fact then them fixtures will be rearranged and you'll 100% know when these teams are playing. You can properly plan things out and everything is all in concrete information and you know it. So if you wanted to wait for your one more week for your wildcard, that is absolutely fair enough. And it also just kind of depends on the situation of your current team as well, because Crystal Palace, they do play Southampton. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the video, but Crystal Palace have a really nice fixture this week, and there's some teams that just have very nice fixture. Look at Man City, who are playing against Leicester as well as that. The one player that's going to be an absolute lock-in in people's wildcard teams is just going to be Daniel Munoz. The form that the guy is in is absolutely ridiculous. It feels like he's getting a contribution every single game. If it's not an attacking contribution, it's a clean sheet. Crystal Palace have been very, very decent since the turn of the year. Defensively, they've been very solid, and as well as that, even Daniel Munoz has the numbers to back it up. He is outperforming what he's actually getting XG-wise. But, as I say, he plays so far forward in that Crystal Palace team. He always seems to be a threat in every single match that he plays. So he's going to be an absolute lock-in for people in their wild card. And it's going to be quite risky. It's going to get to the point where it's going to be quite risky to actually go without him, especially in this game against Southampton. That's the thing with Crystal Palace. A lot of people are thinking about hitting that wild card to get that triple up on Crystal Palace early and to target that fixture against Southampton, which we know Southampton, they're the absolute whipping boys. It's the easiest game of the season for pretty much every single team, bar Leicester at the moment, which we'll discuss. We'll discuss Leicester a little bit later on in the video. But as I say, Daniel Munoz is a Crystal Palace asset on a wild card. He's going to be an absolute lock-in in game week 30, game week 31. Whenever you choose to use that wild card, or if you're not even using your wild card and you want to just transfer players in, Daniel Munoz has just got to be at the top of your list realistically. But also as well there, he is on international duty, and as well as that, of course, we have the FA Cup game as well, so he could potentially, you never know what could happen with injuries, or you could get, I mean, the chance of him getting rested is very low, but just with injuries in general, that's something that we definitely need to be aware of with Daniel Munoz, but he's got to be an absolute lock-in into teams. And these two on screen as well now, Isak and Mateta are going to be pretty much lock-ins into most people's teams. Isak's been unbelievable this season, we know how good he is. He also plays Brentford in game week 30, and of course has that double game week 32, where he's going to be most people's captain, realistically. Mateta's got a decent double up and a double game week, and of course a lot of people are going to be bringing in Mateta ahead of game week 32. I'll probably have him in my personal team. He'll be in my wildcard team, and as well as that, of course, Isak. But realistically, you can't go without Isak just because he is going to be transferred in by everyone by game week 32, and he's pretty much going to be captained by the majority of people. Obviously, some people might go for a bit of a differential, but there's no doubt that Isak in double game week 32, he will be most people's captain. So Isak, for me, will be a lock-in on a wildcard in game week 30 or game week 31 whenever you choose to wildcard. And as well as that, Mateta, at this point, I'd say he's pretty much a lock-in just due to the fact that he has that double game week as well. And by then, of course, as I say, Crystal Palace could also double in game week 33. So you've got 2 games right there for Mateta, or 2 double game weeks in a row, potentially, for Mateta. So a triple up on Crystal Palace, if that's the case, is an absolute no-brainer. And for double game week 32, bringing in Isak for me is an absolute essential. There's also Anthony Gordon as well, which is one that you definitely need to be looking at. And probably even a Newcastle defender as well, if you're really keen on getting that triple up. I'd say at least two Newcastle players. You could also go for someone defensively, maybe like a Dan Burn, who's got pretty nailed on minutes right now. And as I say, he's a very good option for that double game week 32. But he does not double in game week 33. That's already confirmed. But he does then play in the blank game week 34. Going back onto Crystal Palace, I think Ismaila Sarr is going to be a player that's going to be very popular. With that fixture against Southampton, if people are wildcarding, I think he'll be very popular on a wildcard. Comes off the back of it, 26 points in his last 2 game weeks. And as I say, he's been essential, and he's been essential to Crystal Palace's upturn in form. He's really come into his own since probably even the turn of the year, maybe a little bit before that. And as a budget midfielder, obviously, you know, Crystal Palace do have Eze as well, but Sarr's just got that, you know, just over $1 million cheaper. And as well as that, he's got the form as well right now, Ismaila Sarr, with the last couple of games. And at this point, he's quite a big differential as well. And at 5.6 million, just as that 5th midfielder or even a 4th midfielder, he's going to be pretty much playing for you most weeks with the fixtures coming up here. You could have the potential 2 double game weeks in a row. And as I say, he's going to be very popular. But right now, on game week 30, he will be considered a pretty big differential. And having a game against Southampton, with the way that Southampton defend, that looks pretty tempting for his people who want to bring in Ismaila Sarr. I've already discussed 3 Crystal Palace players that I really like the look of, but if you're not a fan of getting maybe Ismaila Sarr, you don't want to get a Palace mid, you want to, obviously. There's a lot of good midfielder options. You could also go for Dean Henderson in goal and go for a double up of the Palace backline with Munoz and Dean Henderson. As I say, Palace since the turn of the year have been very good defensively. Their defensive numbers are very good as well, for the most part, one of the best in the Premier League since the turn of the year. And the fixtures, as I say, are decent enough coming up with them 2 potential double game weeks in a row. Dean Henderson looks like a very good option as a goalkeeper. There's 4 Palace players there. You can also throw Eze into it as well, but I do just think these other 4 players are superior options to Eze in my personal opinion. That would be my triple up of Crystal Palace, those players. But as I say, Dean Henderson, very good defensively, Crystal Palace, and he's got a lot of points over the course of this season as well. So Dean Henderson, I wouldn't argue if you wanted to bring him in, that's absolutely fair enough. As well as that, here is a potential wildcard team that you could go for. Mo Salah doesn't actually double in game week 33, but I just think Mo Salah is so good, you just got to be choosing him realistically. This is kind of off predicted double games. We don't know who's going to win that FA Cup game. Obviously, this team would change slightly depending on who wins them FA Cup games and who actually has a chance of doubling. But, you know, you've got players in there like Henderson, who, of course, we know doubles in 32 and could potentially get 33. Munoz is a lock-in. There's Huijsen for Bournemouth. Bournemouth could potentially double if they do get through Man City in the FA Cup. And then even if Man City lose and Aston Villa then win, Man City would also then double in 33 as well. So Man City double game week is so likely. So Gvardiol could be a very good choice, although he is quite expensive, and City defensively are a little bit questionable. Bournemouth midfielders are interesting. Semenyo's picked up a lot of yellow cards. I believe he's 1 yellow card off 10 yellows. So with Semenyo, I don't know if I'd really be choosing him. This is just a screenshot that I got. So you could maybe go for somebody else. You could swap your keeper and bring in Ismail Assar for Semenyo. Kluivert could be very good if he doubles in 33. He's pretty much a lock-in, to be honest. Anthony Gordon's currently suspended, but as I say, when it gets to double game week 32, you're going to want Anthony Gordon in your team, so he will be in a wild card. Probably even in my game week 30 wildcard team if I was to wildcard in that game week. Mo Salah for me is an absolute lock-in. I don't even care. Erling Haaland, you could also go for Mamouche. If you wanted to save money, I say in your wildcard team in game week 30 or 31, I would be having one of either Haaland or Mamouche. It's up to you. If whoever you think is going to do better and suits your team better, then just go for that. I just think for me, I'd definitely be owning one of them. Mateta, I think, is an absolute lock-in person, as I said before, as well as that Alexander Isak's just a lock-in, just because that double game week 32 for Alexander Isak, that captaincy shout. And then going on to the bench, Areola could potentially double as well, so he's got a likely double game week right now based on the odds. So Areola, and then playing your bench boost in game week 33 for me. If you've got your bench boost still available to you, I will 100% be looking at playing your bench boost in double game week 33. But the chances are you're not going to be able to get 15 double game weekers due to the fact that Newcastle, who you're going to be having in 32, don't then double in 33. But Crystal Palace could very well double in both game weeks. Then, of course, Olanga, he could potentially double in game week 33, another one of them players who would be great for a bench boost, and he's been very good for Forest this season. The guy's an absolute joke, to be fair. Nico Williams is a budget defender. As I say, you could downgrade Haaland to a Mamouche, and then you've got so much more money to play around with some other players as well if you want to do that. But Nico Williams is a budget defender, is very good. His minutes are pretty nailed on at the moment and does look very good in a very good Nottingham Forest team, which has been pretty solid over the course of the season. Definitely up there for the most clean sheets in the whole of the Premier League this season. And then Livramento as well. You can go for Livramento, you can go for Dan Burn. There's a lot of different options, but it's kind of a lot of, you know, you're going to be picking from the same pool of players. Realistically, we're going to know by the FA Cup games who is going to be doubling in game week 33 potentially, and then we can kind of pick our team off that. But that is just based off kind of the odds on who we expect to maybe double and win them FA Cup games to get that double in game week 33. Then of course after that we will be using our free hit chip if you do still have it available to you in game week 34. So all these players here pretty much, the chances are most of them will double, and then we'll just free hit them out in game week 34, and then we've got them all back for game week 35, and then we reassess from there. So that is the kind of thought process behind that. The game week 30 and the game week 31 wildcard, there's not a huge amount of difference between them, but it's the fact that you don't know anything for concrete information until we get to game week 31. As I say, that is when the fixtures are expected to be announced and being rescheduled, so then we know exactly in concrete, in black and white, we know what is going to be happening in FPL going forward. So I hope that video did help you out. If you enjoyed it, do drop a like down below and it helped you out. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. It takes 1 second, it'll be very greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.